He's David Penyota. I'm Irfan Gafar. We are less than 3 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline and our trade deadline coverage here on the fourth period, brought to you by Betway. Dave, I'm going to ask you a question. Where is Claude Giroux going to end up on March 22nd?
Oh man, I'd make a lot of money if I knew that answer. There's a few options that are going to be presented once things really get going in terms of trade talks between Philadelphia and some of the interested parties. Or Claude Giroux met with, or at least had a conversation rather, with Chuck Fletcher earlier this week on Monday to discuss where things are at. Now, they're not at a point yet where they're really pinpointing the potential destinations, but there's a pretty clear indication as to the teams that are interested in Claude Giroux. A lot of the top tier contenders that are chasing a Stanley Cup this year, they all have interest in Giroux, and it's really going to come down to what his preference is in where he wants to end up. So those conversations Monday will continue as this process unfolds before a deal is really available. We're going to hear the Colorado Avalanche. We're going to hear teams like the New York Rangers, like the Florida Panthers, and other teams that are interested in this particular player. But those conversations will definitely escalate as we inch closer to the deadline.
You know, another team that wouldn't shock me that we would hear about Claude Giroux, and we never hear about it, and they're quiet right now. It's the Vegas Golden Knights. They always seem to
Yeah.
be in on something. All right. Well, as we make our way out west, I want to talk about a player with the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that's Max Domi.
Yeah, he's a UFA at the end of the season, and based on how Columbus is performing this year, they're trying to see if they can get some life and really push over these next 2 weeks to get closer to a playoff spot. But realistically, the eight positions right now are pretty much accounted for in the East playoff picture. Columbus has a few free agents, players on expiring deals that they have to figure out the futures with. Domi is certainly one of them. He's got a $5.3 million cap hit in the final year of his deal. There are some teams that are interested in this player to see if they might be able to bring him in, more likely than not, on a winger type of role within a team's top six, likely a second line. The New York Rangers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, a few other teams have been linked to Domi. And the interesting thing about Columbus and the Maple Leafs, they've been scouting each other quite a bit over these last couple of weeks already. So it's something to certainly keep tabs on as we wait to see what the future holds up, rather, for Max Domi, looking like more and more like he may be dealt to a contender by the deadline.
Yeah, you mentioned the Leafs. I'd be shocked that that team doesn't make a move as they head into obviously nearing the postseason. And finally, wrap up out west with the Anaheim Ducks and a few players' names that have been obviously bandied about in trade rumors.
Yeah, that's Ricard Raquel, Hampus Lindholm, and Josh Manson, all set to be UFAs this summer. And it looks like some things are starting to pick up a little bit on that front as the new Ducks GM, Pat Verbeek, really wants to get a full understanding as to whether or not it's possible to re-sign any one of these three players. Now, prior to the GM change in Anaheim, we had been told that Lindholm was pretty much geared towards testing the free agent waters in July. So if that holds up, even after these new conversations with Verbeek, there's a very good likelihood that he's going to be dealt. There are tons of teams, pretty much every team, looking to bolster their blue line has interest in Hampus Lindholm and are just waiting on the Ducks to decide what exactly they're going to do. He shares an agent with Ricard Raquel, the agent being Claude Lemieux. So they're having conversations as well with with Raquel's future. Looks like there's a better chance right now, anyway, that he will be moved ahead of the deadline. Josh Manson, our own Dennis Bernstein, reported recently that he would like to stay in Anaheim. They got to figure that out. But those three guys are going to be looked at. If Lindholm is officially available, and we'll know that relatively soon, he jumps to the top of the charts for a lot of teams.
Absolutely, and it's going to be very interesting here as we are just under 3 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline and our coverage here on the fourth period brought to you by Betway.